Welcome back to another episode of Breaking It Down. I'm your host, Javon. I was gone the last couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks or so. I've been traveling, hanging out with the family, just been doing some other stuff. I'm sorry I left you guys hanging. I am back though. I don't know about better than ever, but here I am. I got some great picks for you this week. Always NFL, ATS over-unders, and DFS picks for week number 10. Man, it's week 10 already. That's crazy. So let's get right into it. So first off, I want to look at the Detroit Lions and the Chicago Bears. We got a great divisional matchup here with Detroit going on the road and catching 7 points against Chicago. Okay, so to look at this line report, let's see what's going on so far. It looks like the number opened at... What did it open at? It opened at 6.5. It's pretty much kind of stayed there. Anywhere you go, it's around 6.5 or 7 with Chicago catching about 75% of money line tickets and 60% of side bets. So actions on Chicago and the lines kind of stayed in that 6.5 to 7 point range. So right now, the Lions are coming off a pretty embarrassing loss in Minnesota while the Bears went to Buffalo and kicked some ass against the Bills. That game was never in question. One thing to note about the Lions this season is they actually have been pretty good on the road other than that loss last weekend to Minnesota. So they got a road win at Miami a few weeks ago. And other than that loss, like I mentioned last week, their 2 other losses came by 2 and 3 points, so they played pretty close games on the road. Chicago coming off that blowout win against Buffalo. I think they're in a prime time letdown spot. They weren't really challenged at all in that game, so we'll see a tough division game with the Lions going on the road here. And in that game, actually, Chicago only put up 200 yards offense, so their offense wasn't really clicking. I know the Bills' defense isn't great, but it's not bad either. So we'll see if Chicago manages to put up more offense against a decent Detroit Lions defense as well. On the injury front, there's nothing really to note here. I would say that the Kerryon Johnson injury would be one thing to watch, but it looks like he's going to suit up. So overall, I feel like the Lions +7 are a good bet here. I think I like Stafford in the quarterback battle. I like how the Lions defense has been playing. They actually held Minnesota to 17 points before the big fumble 6 that they got. So I really thought the Lions defense actually played well last week. It's just the offense couldn't really get going. I like the Lions in this matchup, catching 7 points on the road in Chicago. So, first pick, Lions, D-Town, +7. All right, cool. Moving on. Next up, we have the Seahawks and Rams, and what's kind of a primetime divisional matchup here. It's going to be at 4:30 on Sunday, 4:25 on Fox. So this should be a great game, great divisional matchup. Rams coming off, that big primetime loss against New Orleans, and Seattle coming down to LA from their game against the Chargers. So ironically, the Seahawks are playing both LA teams in a matter of 2 weeks. Kind of weird. So let's look at this line report. It opened at 10. You could find it at 9.5, 10 most places. Seattle is really public, though. They're catching 78% of the spread bets and 83% of the money line. I can get why you would want to take Russell Wilson money line. You're probably going to get 3.5 to 1 odds there. But overall, a lot of the action is on Seattle. So let's go into this game. Rams, off that big loss in New Orleans, primetime loss. The offense obviously played great. They had a few miscues in key spots. McVay went for a fake field goal when he should have just ran the ball. I think it was like fourth and 3 or something. That really changed the game for them, or maybe he just takes the points, and later in that game it's a 1-score instead of a 2-score game. Regardless, it was a really tough loss for LA. And Seattle's coming off a horrible loss against Los Angeles, because they couldn't really get any offense going in that game, and the Chargers pretty much dominated them. So let's look at some trends in this one. The Rams so far this season, 3-0 in the division, 2-1 against the spread. Four of their last 5 games have been on the road. So they're going to be happy to be at home. I think the Rams are going to come out and play well in Los Angeles at the Coliseum. Overall, I just think this is a bad matchup for Seattle. You know, we always talk about Seattle's struggling offensive line play. Well, the Rams have one of the best D-lines in football. So I really expect in that phase of the game, the Rams to dominate up front. Pro Football Focus ranks Seattle in the bottom ranks of the league in run blocking. And going up, like I said, going up against that Rams defensive front with Sue, Donald, Brockers, and now Fowler, I really think that Seattle is going to have a really, really tough time rushing the football and getting that offense going. Injuries to note: Chris Carson, Doug Baldwin, both questionable. We'll see if they play. Obviously, those are 2 of their biggest offensive playmakers. And there's nothing really to speak of with the Rams. I mean, they're pretty much healthy, other than the injuries that they've had, since earlier in the season. So overall, I really like the Rams to bounce back at home here. Give up that 9.5 points. Take the Rams. This should be a 2-touchdown or a 3-touchdown win for them at home. So we got our first pick was the Lions +7. Now we're going to go with the RAMS laying 9.5. Take the LA Rams. All right, and moving on here. I'm going to spray down this board a little bit. I don't know why this thing doesn't really like to erase without it. That's fine, though. That's why we got these tools here. Okay. Moving on. Finally, I like the Cowboys and Eagles to go under the number. That's right, the Cowboys and Eagles are on Sunday Night Football this week, primetime matchup. Let's look at the line report like we always do. It opened at 43.5, kind of hovering around that number. Action's been split on the total. It's around 43.5, 43, depending where you're looking right now. Let's take a look at both these two teams. Obviously, because it's an under game, we're going to focus on the defenses. Overall, Dallas actually has a top 5 yardage defense this year, so they're not giving up a lot of yards. They're getting off the field on 3rd downs, which means that they are going to be limiting opposing offenses, and I think they're going to do the same thing this Sunday night against Philly. The mainstream media right now is really coming down hard on Dallas and Dak, and yes, I do agree with them in some sense that Dak is not the quarterback of the future. Their offense has been struggling a lot. Overall, I see Dallas struggling against this Philly defense as well. So Philadelphia's defense ranks top 4 according to Pro Football Focus. Coming off a bye, we know they're going to be fired up. A lot of energy always at home at Lincoln Financial Field. I believe that's the name of their stadium. And I just think this is a bad matchup for Dallas's offense overall. We know Philly boasts one of the top D lines in football. They should definitely limit that rushing attack of Dallas, because that's the focus of their offense, is just feed Zeke. I mean, they're not really doing anything creative with their play calling. So if that D-line of Philadelphia is able to stop the rushing attack, keep Dallas in 3rd and long most tonight, I don't see that offense really moving the football up and down the field. This year, both these teams have actually been under teams. Both teams are 3-5 when it comes to over-under, so 3 overs, 5 unders. And on the injury front, I would say that Sean Lee is a big loss for that defense. We know he's the leader. He's the play caller. Leighton Vander Esch has filled in pretty well for him as far as taking the reins, being that next linebacker behind him. So that is kind of concerning, but ultimately I just don't see Dallas scoring a lot of points. And I think that the Dallas defense should be able to limit Philly enough to stay under this number. I see this game as somewhere in like the 24-14 kind of range, maybe 21-13. So yeah, we go under 43.5. That's an opening number. So Cowboys, Eagles under 43.5. All right, cool. So there's our 3 plays for the NFL slate this weekend. Gives you a morning play, afternoon, and a night play. So you have action going on all day on Sunday. And I'm feeling pretty good about these. So let's get to this money and let's get a winning day. All right, switching gears now. Let's go ahead and talk about DFS this week. Kind of a weird week. Obviously, the bye weeks have been messing with everybody on season-long leagues. Also in DFS, the pricing's kind of been weird. Every week here, I like to find plays that are going to give you value and, help you win a tournament. So let's break out our DFS board this week. I kind of switched up the show a little bit, and I'm adding in some new wrinkles. So hopefully everyone out there could tell me what they think about the new whiteboards and how that is helping you. Just trying to get everything settled here. How that's helping you check out the plays and fantasy picks. So first, on the QB side of things, I got a cheap play in Baker Mayfield at 5,400 going up against that Falcons defense. They're obviously surrendering a lot of yardage, and I think at home Baker should have a decent game. So let's look at Baker Mayfield for 5,400. Next up, Andy Dalton, 5,800. I think this is a great spot for him. We know the Saints are coming in. They're going to be tired off that game against the Rams, plus the week before against the Vikings. We know their defense isn't great. Dalton at home, 5,800 is a great price tag for him. Get him in your lineups. All right, switching to running back, Aaron Jones. Yeah, he coughed up that fumble last week in New England, but this week he's only 5,000. He's going up against one of the worst rushing defenses in the league in the Dolphins. Packers as a 10-point favorite at home, so they should be running the football a fair amount. Roster Aaron Jones this week. Dion Lewis, revenge game against the Patriots. I really like him to get it done as in the pass catching, as well as last week we saw him starting to rush the football between the tackles as well. So I feel like Dion Lewis is a good play at home, $4,600. And we're going to stack John Ross with Andy Dalton this week. He's coming off that hamstring injury. AJ Green's going to be out for a couple weeks. He's only $3,900. This is a guy that could definitely win you a tournament and get you, cashing it inside of a big tournament field because he goes over the top for big plays. He's a speedster. John Ross, $3,900. Solid play this week. Fitzy at 5,400. He had a big game. Before the bye week. He scored 29 Drafkings points. He should be catching a lot of balls this week because Arizona is a 16-point underdog, and they should be throwing a lot in Kansas City. Kansas City doesn't have the best defense in the league, so I like Larry Fitzgerald at that price tag. Jack Doyle, 4,300. Cheap, at home, off a bye week. Andrew Luck's playing way better this season. His offensive line is starting to protect him more. Luck likes to look for Doyle in the red zone, so Jack Doyle at 4,300, great play. Second little bonus pick here at tight end is Ricky Seals-Jones, 3,000. Kind of going off what I was saying about Arizona being a big dog, having to throw a lot this week. Maybe they'll siphon some targets to him, and Seals-Jones could meet value and maybe hit big in a tournament. On the defensive side of things, I see that the Rams are only 2,400 this week, and I'm licking my chops trying to get them in the lineup because they are always opportunistic. They usually come up with sacks. It's a really cheap price tag against a bad offensive line, and Russell Wilson has thrown some picks this year, so maybe they can bring one back. Rams 2,400, really solid play. And then 3,400 for the Jets, definitely playing up here. But I think against Josh Allen, the Bills are one of the historically worst offenses in the National Football League. Jets have been actually a really good defense this year, and they should definitely come through at home at that price tag. So there's the big board of DFS plays. They're all cheap. Get them in your lineups, and I hope I can win you guys some money. So that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Week 10. I can't believe it. We only have 7 weeks left, but let's stay in the moment. It's all about the journey, and we'll see what happens at the end. Thanks for tuning in to Breaking It Down. I will see you next week.